It's the phrase whispered in credit repair forums, mentioned by friends who got a collection removed, floating everywhere online. Pay for delete. The idea that you can pay a collection agency, and, in exchange, they'll remove the item from your report entirely, better than a normal paid collection, which usually just changes status without disappearing. The question people actually need answered isn't whether pay for delete exists. It's whether it still works right now in the current environment and what actually happens when you try it. Tonight, the honest picture. Not hype, not dismissal. What pay for delete really is, why it's become harder, and exactly how to attempt it correctly if you decide it's worth trying. The basic mechanic is straightforward. Normally, paying a collection changes its status from unpaid to paid on your credit report. The item still stays listed, just with an updated status. Pay for delete is a negotiated agreement where the collector agrees to completely remove the entry from your credit report in exchange for payment, rather than simply marking it paid. The appeal is obvious. A completely removed item stops affecting your score at all. A paid item, while somewhat better than unpaid, still has some impact simply by existing on the report. This has never been a formal, guaranteed right. It's always been a negotiation, something a collector can choose to agree to, not something owed to a consumer by any regulation. That distinction matters for everything that follows. Pay for delete used to be more commonly accepted than it is now, and there are specific reasons why. The major credit bureaus have increasingly discouraged this practice among the agencies that report to them. Some data furnisher agreements between collection agencies and the credit bureaus include language that reporting must be accurate and consistent, meaning if a debt was legitimately owed and collected, some agreements discourage simply deleting the record of it existing, since that, arguably, makes the report less accurate, not more. Larger, more established collection agencies, the ones handling debt for major original creditors, are generally far less willing to agree to this than smaller, independent collectors. Bigger agencies have more to lose from bureau relationships and are more likely to follow standardized internal policy that doesn't allow deletion agreements. Where pay for delete still has real traction is with smaller collection agencies, particularly ones that purchased old, already charged off debt for a fraction of its value. These agencies have much more flexibility, much less standardized policy, and a stronger incentive to recover any payment at all on a debt they bought cheap. Deletion becomes a bargaining chip they can afford to offer. Setting realistic expectations matters more here than almost anywhere else in credit repair because so much online content oversells this. It is not guaranteed. It is not universal. It works inconsistently, collector by collector, situation by situation. Some agencies flatly refuse, regardless of what's offered. Others will negotiate readily. There's no way to know in advance which type you're dealing with, except by asking. It's also worth understanding that even when a collector verbally agrees, and even when a signed agreement is obtained, deletion isn't always executed cleanly. Sometimes an item is removed and then reappears later due to a reporting error or an account being resold to yet another agency before the deletion processes. This is one of the strongest reasons the next section matters as much as it does. Where pay for delete still has real traction is with smaller collection agencies, particularly ones that purchased old, already charged off debt for a fraction of its value. These agencies have much more flexibility, much less standardized policy, and a stronger incentive to recover any payment at all on a debt they bought cheap. Deletion becomes a bargaining chip they can afford to offer. If you decide it's worth trying, the sequence matters enormously, because doing this wrong can mean paying with nothing gained. Never send payment before securing a written agreement. This is the single most important rule. A verbal promise from a phone representative means nothing if it isn't honored, and there's no way to hold a collector accountable to a promise that only exists as a memory of a phone call. Request the agreement in writing on the collector's letterhead before any payment moves. The agreement should state specifically that upon receipt of the agreed payment, the collector will request deletion of the trade line from all 3 credit bureaus. Read it carefully. Some agreements are worded to say they'll update the account rather than delete it, which isn't the same thing at all. Once a written agreement is in hand and confirmed to say deletion specifically, only then send payment, ideally by a method that provides proof of payment and, if possible, is traceable and can't be reversed unexpectedly. After payment, monitor the credit reports at all 3 bureaus over the following weeks. Deletion sometimes takes a full billing cycle or 2 to process. If it hasn't happened within a reasonable window, follow up in writing referencing the signed agreement and the payment confirmation. If a collector refuses to provide anything in writing and only offers a verbal promise, that's a strong signal not to proceed with payment based on the deletion promise alone. At that point, paying is simply paying the debt, with any deletion being a bonus rather than a guarantee, which changes the calculation of whether it's even worth doing this way versus simply settling the balance for less without expecting removal. Not every situation calls for attempting this, and understanding when to pursue it saves time and disappointment. Worth trying. The debt is with a smaller, independent collection agency rather than a major national firm. The debt has already been resold once or twice, since resold debt tends to be held by more flexible agencies. There's a real willingness to pay the full or most of the balance. Since deletion leverage is strongest when offering full payment rather than a steep discount, less likely to work. The debt is with a large, well-known collection agency with standardized policies. The original creditor is a major bank or lender with a data furnisher agreement that explicitly restricts this practice. The offer on the table is a small fraction of the balance, since low settlement offers combined with a deletion request asks for a lot while offering comparatively little. In situations where it's unlikely to work, the more realistic path is still worth pursuing. Negotiate the best possible settlement, get it in writing, pay it, and let the paid status stand. A paid collection is meaningfully better than an unpaid one, even without deletion, and continuing to build new positive credit history alongside it will matter more over time than whether this one specific item disappeared or simply shows paid. Pay for delete still exists in 2026, but it's not the guaranteed trick it's sometimes presented as. It works inconsistently, it's more available with smaller agencies than large ones, and it only means anything when it's in writing before a single dollar moves. Never pay based on a verbal promise. Get the deletion agreement in writing, confirm it says deletion, and not simply an update. Then pay, then monitor all 3 reports afterward, and know in advance when the odds favor trying this versus when a straightforward settlement, paid and documented, is the more realistic outcome. The goal was never the phrase itself. It was always a cleaner report and a stronger score. Sometimes deletion gets you there. Sometimes a well-negotiated paid settlement does the same job just as well. This is Credit Clarity. We'll see you in the next one.